Now joining us from St. Louis, we welcome back to Houston Sports Talk, MLB.com national correspondent Alyson Footer. She had a fascinating article this past week that we want to get to in a bit. But Alyson, great to have you back, and I can't believe we get to talk a little Astros buzz. The story's been King George. Springer became the first rookie to hit 7 homers in 7 games since Rudy York in 1937. Before I have you break down Rudy York, not really. We know he's been the talk of Houston, but what are they saying about Springer around baseball right now? What are you hearing?
Pretty much that he's doing what everybody thought he would be doing when he got drafted a couple of years ago. You know, he's a 5-tool player, and they just love everything about him, about the way he hits and the way he can field his position. But certainly he was expected to be a home run guy, a run producer, middle-of-the-order guy, which eventually he will be. I think he's been hitting second. But just an explosive bat. And he's like, he can change the look of an entire team, because when you put a bat like that in the lineup, it changes things for the other hitters too. And, things weren't going great for him when they first called him up, which happens a lot with a lot of players when they first come up. They either do really, really well, or they can't hit at all. And somewhere in between is what they eventually become. But fortunately, it is kind of funny that the Astros are sort of in a position where there's no sense of urgency. Back in the old days, if you brought a kid up and wanted him to get acclimated, he just had a few weeks, and if he wasn't going to hit his weight, he needed to go back down, because there were games that needed to be won, and there was a division race that they were a part of. But that's not the case right now, and so you can kind of let him get comfortable and just get in his groove. And once he started, figuring things out a little bit, look what happened, and it's been fun to watch.
George Springer is getting to play, as you mentioned, and launched himself into the AL Rookie of the Year race because of that. Who besides the Yankees, Masahiro Tanaka, and the White Sox, Jose Abreu, is in the conversation, and how would you handicap Springer's chances at this point?
I think you just named, the top guys, and I would say that Springer, it just depends on what he does over the course of the rest of the season, but if he maintains, he's not going to hit like he's been hitting in the last 10 days, but, if he continues to produce at a very high level, Tanaka's going to be hard to knock down, but Springer certainly, I think, being an everyday position guy, I think that he'd have a really good shot at it. I sort of predicted when they called him up that he would be the Astros representative at the All-Star games. And then I thought, after a couple of weeks, it looked like maybe I, kind of jumped the gun a little bit there. But I still, I think that he's gotten right back in there too. Of course, Jose Altuve is having a really good year too, so he'd probably be the All-Star candidate. But Springer, just to have the Astros producing a guy that's going to be in the Rookie of the Year running that you're going to be talking about all year, these are all really good things for the organization, and this is what they need to be doing, and this is how, you need these winning streaks in the middle of the season to keep people interested and to keep the hope alive. And while they're still going to have a hard time, I believe, avoiding 100 losses, this is exactly the direction that the team needs to be going right now.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you what you thought about them overall. Do you think they can make a run at 500 this year, or are we still looking at closer to 100 losses?
Yeah, I think they're going to lose somewhere in the 90s. I know that 500 is not possible. I love what the pitching's been doing, and I think the starting rotation has been fantastic. That's not going to last. They'll be, they can be effective and good or whatever, but I don't think that it's going to be, they're not going to be lights out the entire season. There's still work to be done. There's still a lot of improvement from a roster standpoint that this team needs to go through, which is the process, and that will happen over the next couple of years. And certainly what Dallas Keuchel has been doing has been great, and he was a high draft pick, and this is, kind of expected of him. This isn't just some, random guy that they picked off waivers or got in the Rule 5 draft. He was the guy that they got to be, a middle of the rotation left-handed starter. So, and Jared Cosart is obviously, he's like the highest touted prospect they've had pitching-wise in a while, and he's certainly, been producing. But as far as, 500, they dug themselves into quite a hole in the first 6 weeks, so you'd have to play at like a 650 clip to even, come close to that, and that's not happening.
Mentioning all-star candidates possibly, maybe a long shot here, Dallas Keuchel, because he's been really pitching well for the Astros this season and has even won the AL Pitcher of the Week. Wanted to get back to those comments that Seattle manager Lloyd McClendon said that kind of caused a controversy where he said Dallas Keuchel had average stuff after he pretty much shut down the Mariners. Are McClendon's comments shared around baseball, or do most of the people around MLB feel that Dallas Keuchel has turned a corner to be one of the better young left-handers in the game?
I really haven't talked to many people around the league about Dallas Keuchel, but in McClendon, there's a lot of managers who have said things similar to that when they get shut down by somebody that they feel that they shouldn't have. They do it a little bit more subtly. They'll say things that are a little less jarring, that are a little less headline grabbing, like, sometimes you have to tip the cap to the other pitcher, but to be honest with you, I thought we could have hit him better. I didn't think that he was that overpowering. I definitely didn't think that we had a good approach coming in. I mean, there's ways that you go around that, and he basically was just saying, like, this guy isn't very good, and we should have beaten him. So it was goofy, and I saw a quote later where he said that sometimes when he needs to get a message to his team, he goes to the media. If he doesn't want to talk directly to them, that's like, there should be red flags just popping up all over the place in the Mariners front office for comments like that. Because that's the last thing that you really want your manager to be thinking or doing. You have to be the great communicator, and you have to figure out how to maintain that communication with 25 different personalities and, a lot of moving parts. So there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more problems to that situation than just the comment that he made. So, of course, it's not the Astros problem, but certainly Lloyd McClendon, he probably could use some, PR classes.
Loved your article on how the city of Houston integrated, Alyson. They did it in practically overnight, and what part the Astrodome played in all of that, which I think a lot of people didn't know. We've linked up to it on our site, HoustonSportsTalk.net, for anybody that might have missed it. I think most Houstonians had never heard this story. Can you briefly explain what exactly happened? And plus, I'd love to hear about how you actually discovered this story.
I'm a little flabbergasted. I don't know if flabbergasted is the word. I'm just a little irked that I never knew this story, that this has never really been written about. When I went to research it, I found like 2 brief articles on it, and they didn't really delve into a lot. What happens is when the civil rights game is approaching, MLB.com has a team of reporters, usually locally based, wherever the civil rights game is going to be played, that do a series of stories on all different kinds of things that are related to the civil rights game. So the editor-in-chief, our big boss at MLB.com, his name is Vin Mann. He is the grandson of Roy Haffines, who brought the National League team to got Major League Baseball to grant the team to Houston. So if anybody remembers the history of Houston, I mean, he was a mayor, he was a judge, and he got the Astrodome built. So that's my boss. So he emailed and said we need to do this story. And I had never heard that. So there's a Reverend Bill Lawson, who's a very pretty well-known reverend in Houston, and he is still living. He's a very healthy 80-something-year-old man who was very much involved in the talks and the meetings back then when they were getting ready to integrate. So I contacted him, and that's where I got all of my information for this story. So I thought, it amazes me that the city leaders, the business leaders, the black community, the white community, they got together secretly at the Rice Hotel and had meetings and decided that they needed to integrate the city in one day. They needed to do it peacefully. They needed to do it without anybody knowing. They got the media involved. They invited them to the meetings and said, please do not write about this or talk about this until it's over, which nowadays you obviously couldn't do because everybody would be tweeting it as they were saying it. But back then, they were, very, very compliant with that. And it wasn't really because of a moral issue. I mean, Reverend Lawson was very upfront with the fact that it was a money issue. The ship channel had just been expanded. The Astrodome was coming. The referendum had been passed to build it. And NASA had just been built at Johnson Space Center. So this was becoming Boomtown USA, but it was right before that. And they said, we need this to be a place where people can live and work and spend money. And we need, for business purposes, we need everybody to be able to be spending their money here. They didn't want to be associated with the Deep South, with the Mississippi and Alabama. They had their own ideas during integration, but Texas was interested in making money. So that's what happened. And one day, the whites only signs came down, and the department stores opened their doors to African Americans who walked in and were asked if they wanted to try something on. On the buses, the African Americans were invited to stay in the front. And it was swift and it worked. And it became, something that Houston certainly should be known for. and nobody knows it. So I was honored to talk to Reverend Lawson and do the story and just, kind of bring some attention to it, because I think it's a huge part of Houston's history and nobody's talking about it.
It's a great story, and you can catch it on MLB.com, your story. And just wanted to ask you about the commissioner who was in town last week for the civil rights game, Bud Selig. His term's about to end. We know he's disliked in Houston because of the AL move. But what is his legacy to you, and who do you think possibly will be the next commissioner after Bud Selig when he supposedly steps down in January? Will it be Rob Manfred? We heard a dark horse candidate last week, possibly Bob Iger. What are you hearing?
I think it's going to be, things have been leaking out. I don't have any inside information on that. I read the same thing everyone else does in the news. Manfred seems to be the front runner. There's going to obviously be, when you're talking about owners getting together and having to pick somebody, then there's going to be a lot of different opinions and a lot of different ideas on what they want in a commissioner. So I really have absolutely no idea. As far as Commissioner Selig's legacy, he's done so many great things for the game. I think inventing the wild card was huge. If you look at some of the races that occurred after the wild card was implemented, it just made baseball so relevant to 10 or 12 more cities in baseball in September. Some of the division races, it's funny because you look back at when the Astros were in it in 2004 and 2005, they were never in the division race. They were 14 games back in the division, each one of those years. But the wild card race kept them in it and got them into the playoffs and got them into the World Series one year. So I think that's, one of his greatest legacies. MLB Advanced Media, of course, it's my company, but that aside, it's a $2 billion industry. It has changed the face of the technology world and sports. And he was a huge supporter of that from the very start. He didn't understand any of it. He doesn't get online, but he, put the trust in the people that he knew would be doing the right thing for the game and for MLB.com. And so, he's done a lot of really, really good things, and he somehow kept harmony and peace between the owners and the owners themselves amongst each other, which is hard to do. The union, his relationship with the union is unprecedented. Baseball, the labor strikes and the strikes and all through the years, that was normal. That wasn't an anomaly. It wasn't so much, when the CBA would come up, it wasn't are they going to be able to avoid a strike? It was when are they going to strike? And that's, a thing of the past for now. And so I think that, he's left a lasting legacy. I know that he's not real popular in Houston. It's unfortunate. I think he understands that. But for the game of baseball, I think he's been really good.
We wanted to finish up here asking about the MLB.com awards, or the Year in Baseball awards, where the Gibby Awards that you hand out during the season, and you've called yourself the Vanna White of the ceremony. It makes me wonder who the Pat Sajak is, right? Explain what the Gibby Awards are to people listening who may not know, and what's been your favorite moment so far in all these tours of the ballparks handing out the awards?
The Gibby Awards, it stands for Greatness of Baseball Yearly Awards, and they're voted on by the fans, SABR people, front office folks, media. It involves a lot of different voters, and it's really fun. They have a lot of different topics, and it includes the postseason as well. And they're just, it's just starting. It's in its infancy. It's in its second year, and as being renamed the Gibbies, I believe it's only been a couple of years. And so I go around, and they're really these really nice, lucite trophies. They're really heavy. And sometimes we do a pregame ceremony. It's just whatever the teams want. Sometimes we tape something, and then we run it on the scoreboard, a little presentation. And it's really nice. The players have been really gracious about it. I think my favorite would be Miguel Cabrera, just because he was the first presentation I did last year, and he got it again this year. And so he kind of knows the protocol. He's just a good guy. He's a lot of fun. And he wasn't anticipating the first time when I gave it to him how heavy it was. So we were on the field during the presentation, and he almost topped one of them because they were so heavy. But and it's just a nice thing to do. It's an extra award, and I realize that it's not like the MVP awards that the BBWA gives out, but they do recognize players for a lot of really good things that they do during the season, and I enjoy kind of traveling around and giving them out.
Always good stuff from MLB.com's Alyson Footer. Thanks so much for joining us, taking the time. We appreciate it, Alyson.
Anytime. Thank you.
Check out more interviews on HoustonSportsTalk.net.